Hey guys, how's it going? Mega Gears here. So I decided to talk about a little known hidden gem that Image Comics had produced, I guess, a year or two ago. It's called Hadrian's Wall. It is a cyberpunk science fiction detective thriller, a noir, if you will. And it's pretty great. It's a miniseries that ran for 8 issues. You can pick it up in a trade format. You can pick it up on Comixology if you like the digital copy. I personally would suggest just grabbing it in trade hardcover, just because how great the artwork is. But yeah, let's go ahead and get into it. Hadrian's Wall is about a murder. All right, simple as that. It's one of those things where issue 1 starts off, somebody's dead. The main character has to figure out who did it. But it's one of those things, as you get further on, things get a little bit more complicated, as most noir detective thrillers happen. Which is really, at its core, that's what it is. It is a detective thriller that happens to be set in the future. It's a sci-fi story in space. And it kind of has this cool 80s, 80s detective noir crime scene thing going on. Mainly because of the artwork, which is gorgeous, by the way. It's really good. But main concept, main focus about it is that the detective, Simon Moore, lives on Earth, right? He is a pill-popping alcoholic. The guy is a complete mess. He's really brooding, really angry, really pessimistic about life in general. And as you get through the story, there's flashbacks each issue that let you know, kind of fill in the gaps, what happened, why is he the way he is. So his best friend comes up to him and is like, hey man, an astronaut was murdered on Hadrian's Wall, which is the name of the ship that's a mining ship for resources, for energy and stuff like that. And it was a very productive business. We're talking about people made millions upon millions of dollars. So they need to figure out what's going on so they can close the case, so they can continue mining for this special resource on, I think it was on Mars, where they're mining it. So he goes to his buddy, he's like, hey man, go ahead and do this for me, figure out who murdered this guy, you get paid 150 grand, no questions asked. My mind, when reading this, I was like, this sounds a little shady. And as you go through the story, you pretty much figure out that's the deal. But the thing that makes it a little bit more interesting and kind of adds a little bit of complexity to it is that the main detective, Simon Moore, was apparently shot by his boss, who was the astronaut that got killed, who actually stole his ex-wife from him. So one of the prime suspects is his ex-wife, and you're just kind of like, oh, okay. This makes things a bit more complicated. Not to mention that the pills that he takes helps him deal with a wound that was inflicted upon him by the guy who shot him, who was his ex-boss, who is the victim of the story. They got murdered. So as you're going through the story, you're trying to figure out, okay, who did it? You get the whole thing of the list of suspects that work there. You got the engineer. You got the, the chemist. You've got a couple of astronauts. You got the guys who are the techs, the mechanics. You have the chief of the ship. You have all these things going on, right? All these people that are working on Hadrian's Wall. And it's up to Simon to figure out who killed them, why they killed them, even though he could care less, but he's got to figure it out to get paid. And since it's 8 issues, each issue goes by really fast, and it's pretty awesome. Some of the things that make this story a little different from others is because the use of flashbacks work very well and keep up the speed of the story. It's one of those things where you find out that a main character, his ex-wife, they broke up just because their marriage just started falling apart. But there's little things in there that make the characters relatable. That's one of the things that's really done well about this story. The characters are what sell the story, along with the art. If the characters did not work, this comic would not work. It's one of those smaller character-driven kind of stories that you'll see, for smaller films or character-driven films, that the characters are what make the story. Because they're on a ship the whole time for the whole story, right? So if the characters weren't interesting, it would make everything extremely boring and you wouldn't care. The fact that the main character, the detective, is going through drug withdrawals and he can't really perform his job accurately. That's one of the coolest things in there because he starts hallucinating. His psyche starts talking to him. It's like, hey man, why don't you just chalk it up and just say your ex-wife killed him for the money. I mean, she screwed you over. She took half your money. It's kind of one of those things where he's fighting with his own damaged psyche while trying to figure out who murdered this guy. And as things start to go on, things get complicated. You actually even get some space pirates that break into the ship and interrupt everything. So then you start to realize, okay, so he's got to investigate this murder, but it may not even matter when he figures out who did it because he might be dead because you got these space pirates trying to figure out, hey, where's this special mineral that sells for millions upon millions of dollars? And that's when you start to figure out that there's kind of like a Cold War going on between different planets, and there's like a civil war going on, civil unrest between people that live on Earth, between the high, very wealthy aristocrats, businessmen, CEOs of these huge companies that live out and further in space, and the people that are stuck in the middle on Mars that just got kicked out from their homes by these wealthy people. So there's a lot of moving parts, and it's a really packed story, but it's pretty awesome. So I thought I'd go ahead and give a rundown of this because a lot of people seem to be looking for really neat science fiction stories that are well told. And it's kind of funny because this is by Image Comics, which lately they haven't been putting out a lot of really good titles, but this didn't come out too long ago. So it's kind of weird how for a good year it seemed like they were dropping a whole bunch of really good sci-fi miniseries that were very well written and very well drawn. The art in this and another book called Drifter have really good art, and it's just kind of like this disconnect trying to figure out what exactly happened. But yeah, guys, let me know what you think. Like, share, comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you on the next.